evening. I am Aaron Rayleigh. I am a member of Marching Band Works composition team and really excited to talk with you guys tonight.
What's going on?
Elliot, what's up, man?
Oh, is this the part where I talk? I'm Elliot. I'm from Marching Health. I'm the founder. Dr. Elliot Cleveland, if you want to be fancy, physical therapist and founder of Marching Health. And march beside Aaron Rayleigh at Spirit of Atlanta.
Spirit 2011. Absolutely. Mr. Arve over here and I go way back.
Yep. When do we know each other from what? Palmetto? Before Palmetto, though.
It was Verdigris back in the day, right?
Oh my God.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Palmetto after that, obviously.
Yep.
We did the WGI thing. That was cool.
Yeah.
All right. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit of match grip. Whoops, that's match grip. Hey, match grip and traditional grip. It's Technique Tuesday. So we're going to talk a little bit about
for all
that.
the confusion right there.
Yeah, that's it. So last week on Tuesday, we put out a poll from the Marching Band Works page, and we've had about 1,500 responses. Overwhelmingly now, it has become very heavily traditional grip. We've got about 62% traditional grip and 38% match grips. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, as an educator myself, as a composer, I advocate for use of all different variations of technique. Obviously, proper technique, but variations of technique are all beneficial. And so we're not advocating for one side or the other. We're just going to talk a little bit about some of that. So, Mr. Cleveland, tell me a little bit about some health implications of match grip. See, I did it again. Match grip, traditional grip.
You better watch that middle finger too.
Yeah.
So just health implication wise, I do not see a ton of drummers come in with injuries due to traditional grip. Typically the only thing that happens is they get a blister over the index finger where they're putting the stick and putting too much pressure on it. But usually you put a Band-Aid on that and it's gone in a couple weeks of starting out traditional grip. What we do see a decent amount of is people who come in with carpal tunnel syndrome on the right side from hyperextending the wrist and doing way too heavy of all wrist technique from the match grip standpoint, where they're extending the wrist. That puts pressure on the carpal tunnel, which has nerves flowing through it, and that causes a lot of the numbness and tingling and grip issues that percussionists experience.
So Elliot, I got a question real quick about that. So when people do traditional grip, a lot of times they kick out that elbow extra far, right, to try to match this angle.
Yep.
What's your impression and your expert opinion on elbow in the right hand?
Do you think that happens more in people on the match grip side of traditional, or does it also happen when people play match grip?
I think it happens on both, but I've seen it even more, I think, in traditional grip.
But the irony is nothing happens on the left side, right?
Sure.
That kind of gets clear sailing on that left side. One of the fixes that we did at Wando for that when I was teaching there with Jeff Handel, and this was all his idea, was tilt the drums. And John Mapes put out a video about that. But if you're going to do traditional, it has a more natural feel to avoid that whole dropping of the shoulder if you just change the angle of the drum to what that was originated for. Personally, I've never marched a tilted drum. That whole concept really didn't come around until, not the tilted drum concept, excuse me, but the modernization of it really started over the past few years and spread a bit more, it seems. But I marched flat drums, and I felt that people did have more tension on the right side than the left side marching a flat drum versus traditional. My only beef with tilting the drums is that as an educator, I hate walking up to a tilted snare drum and trying to play on it because everything is backwards at that point.
Yeah. Hey man,
so
that's when you bust out. That's when you bust out the right hand traditional.
that should have been the third option on your poll.
About the students.
Definitely.
So that's the only beef there. But I do think there's a lot more right-sided tension from the match grip standpoint, whether that is tenors, whether that is concert snare drum, or marching snare drum. That side, people tend to flare out their elbows more, which leads to upper trap. That's the muscle right here in your neck getting a lot tighter and having more strain all the way down, because your nerves come from your neck. So they're the ones that are taking a lot of the brunt of the forces when things change up the chain as far as muscle tension goes.
From an educational perspective, I'm a high school teacher here in Columbia and Lexington. From an educational perspective, the thing that I've struggled with the most is kind of finding long-term practical application for younger students with traditional grip, as far as teaching that to your drum line. For me, I'm trying to develop a musician that is going to be, lifelong involved in music. And what's the most, typical thing they're going to do is probably play some drum set at church. Yes, you can use traditional grip, on Sundays at church. But a lot of times I want students to kind of have that overall ability to play, pick up the timpani mallets, which is not too far from match grip, pick up the marimba mallets, which obviously is, a version of match grip. And so I really like, from an educational perspective, using match grip in the classroom.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I'm just thinking about my time now. I'm 4.5 years removed from my doctorate. And I think of all the experience that I've had, since school, being in school, whether it's a drum corps application, playing an orchestra, concert band at a church, on a drum set, on a marimba, on timpani, on all the different things in my personal experience. And I have never once needed traditional grip. Needed, you know what I mean? If I'm going to play something that's light, maybe swing or even some Latin stuff on a drum set, so traditional grip is going to be nice because there's some efficiencies to it, going from a mounted tom down to a snare drum, something like that. Any sort of like flipping over for, rim kind of stuff, there's some efficiencies there. But as far as like technical things and what you need it for, there's no real practical application in the professional world that I can really think of. I think that the skill of holding the stick in a way that's different than match grip, that principle is kind of important. You know what I mean? Like there's times where you have to do funny things with holding mallets and stuff, depending on context, depending on, whenever you're changing implements or something in the middle of a piece, something of that nature, there's something to be said for being able to manipulate your hands and do different things with implements. But from a practical setting, like traditional grip is, I don't see a practical need for it,
Yeah.
And it's funny looking at all the old books and even the newer books, for any instrument for that matter, but especially snare drum. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of any books that call for anything that is actually like traditional specific, if that makes sense. There's a lot of stuff that is just all playing the snare drum, you know what I mean? And even back in the day when traditional was something that was a lot more standard, there's just nothing that you need traditional for. And I don't even recall in the book them actually saying the word traditional grip. I would imagine at the time, simply because that was the grip. No need to really bring it out. But at the same time, it just seems like there's no real practical application for it. So Elliot, I see they're smiling. So I'm
apart from marching snare drum and jazz drum set, I don't see a huge need for it. Now, I'm extremely biased because I was a marching snare drummer and drum set performer. I'm not a music major by any means. I happen to be left-handed too, which made traditional grip 10 times easier for me than the average right-hander, I felt. So I was able to just pick it up and go, where a lot of my right-handed friends struggled to pick that up, which as an educator, you don't get left-handers very often who can come in and do that. Most kids are right-handed and trying to figure out how their left hand operates on a marching snare drum. But being more of the marching percussion side of things, I don't like to play marching snare drum match grip. Just as from a performer perspective, I don't think that they gain anything compared to the other sections. We always said, if you really love playing match grip, quads play match grip for a reason, because they have to get around the drums easier that way. Snare drums, that's their thing, to challenge them in a different way and be able to use some different implements on a marching snare drum via the traditional grip that they couldn't do match grip.
But I'm curious. So if we're gonna do it on the marching snare drum for the sake of like, let's do something different. like, like where's the end of the line for that? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
If there's
there's
no
no
like
logic
actual
there.
yeah, I mean, if there's no
Well,
actual practical reason to do it, and it's
the
just
only reason is because that, it was made for the marching snare drum
Right.
when that was tilted on someone's leg
well,
back in the
yeah,
day.
200 years ago when we didn't have the second industrial revolution to make metal, we sort of evolved since then. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that we've kept going with tradition, and yeah.
Something I saw a lot from comments underneath the poll, people were obviously getting pretty heated about it and saying that, as an educator, you're doing a disservice to your students if you don't teach them traditional grip. And I don't know if I agree with that. I've got a student right now who is marching in a top 3 open class WGI group who during the fall, in our fall marching band season, we play all match grip, but he plays traditional there, and he's auditioning for Spirit of Atlanta. Is probably going to make Spirit of Atlanta snare line this year. He's going to play traditional grip there, and so I've taught him privately outside of that, and helped him develop that technique. And I think any students that are going to go to that next level, you can work with them on that technique outside of your fall instruction.
Do you feel like once you teach a marching snare drummer traditional grip, that whenever they go to play other percussion instruments, they don't tend to enjoy that switching grips as much? Or is there, from a student perspective, do you see a difference in demeanor of, hey, I've learned this grip, now I just want to go play marching snare drum a lot more than the other instruments?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I actually, like today, the practice room across from my office at the school is where he was practicing his marching snare drum licks today. And we've got a concert coming up next Tuesday, and he's struggling on his mallet parts, but he hasn't touched the mallet instrument since he's, auditioning for WGI and DCI. He's spending his time there because he's all about that traditional grip, which is great. And I'm all for that. And that's his passion. But, where's the other side of the percussion education there?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, it's a gigantic philosophical question, but it's like, what's the purpose of music in a K through 12 classroom? And if you have a philosophy behind what that is it to tell the student what to study, and you sort of plant your flag as I'm the expert and you're going to do this because I'm the one with hindsight and expertise? Or is it that we're going to consider what the student wants out of this experience? And you know then it's 100% about the student and give them the experience that they want. I think those are two totally different things. I'm not sure if there's maybe one or two segments in between there, you know what I mean? Those are kind of two very extreme things, because if you're all about the student, then that means like you're 100% listening to the student, you know what I mean? And so they're going to do exactly what they want. If they never want to play accessories, then they're never going to learn it. But
Right. And that's
others
exactly how I was. I mean, my band director pushed me to learn some things percussion wise, but I was so snare drum focused that I don't have a great um, ability and affinity for other percussion instruments. And it was to the point where I didn't even have the muscle memory, because I practiced marching snare drum so much that I didn't have the muscle memory to be able to switch back to matched very well.
Wow.
It would take me a month or more of practicing matched before a region band audition to get my left hand to work in the match grip world again.
Years of teaching percussion, not every student I'm going to teach is going to go on to be, Dr. John Smith, like Dr. Brandon Arve over here in music, but every student is going to be excited about a specific thing in their musical career. And I try to inspire them along that way to stick that out and just be involved in music moving forward. That's the most important thing for me as an educator.
So how do you balance the two sort of extremes, the students that really do want to be well rounded and the students that really do just want to focus on one thing? Like if you had an Elliot Cleveland in your classroom that only wanted to
I'm
play
tough to deal with.
only wanted to play marching snare drum licks and could play the crap out of some stuff, but then couldn't sing a note or play
Literally
a single note
could
on
not match a note with the rest of the ensemble.
Well, for me, I mean, I think that goes to, differentiation in your classroom instruction on a daily basis, and still challenging those students, because even if the student that is going to, you know, be a marching snare drummer, if you push him to learn some mallet things, that is going to grow his musical ability, which can apply to what he's most passionate about.
So Aaron, I know that we're going down a totally different rabbit hole, it sounds like, but for me, it's everything to do with traditional grip, because it
Yeah.
brings in that whole philosophy of, well, if it's not a practical thing that students should, like a professional really doesn't utilize unless they're maybe behind a drum kit, then is there any value to actually teaching this? There's value if you're going to let it be student driven, in my opinion. There's no value if you're actually going to try to get students to have a baseline understanding of percussion equipment.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
So that's why I'm getting to this philosophical question of like, well, what are we actually doing here? You know what I mean?
I think the most important thing behind all of this is knowing your students, knowing the group you're working with, and capitalizing on what they get excited about. You know, if you've got 4 snare drummers in your high school band that are all wanting to do WGI and they want to do DCI, you know, let's do traditional grip in the fall and let's learn that and let's dig into it. You know, if you've got kids that they're really excited about being drum set players and they want to do, you know, some different things with percussion, then let's do match grip. And obviously, you know, like Vandergrift High School just won a BOA national championship and they were playing or match grip, and it's okay. You know what I mean? A lot of people were so shocked that when they saw the Vandergrift video in the lot that they were playing match grip, you know, and that is okay. Yes, they're awesome, but Chino Hills is also fantastic playing traditional grip, you know?
I think it's funny when people get baffled by the grip, because it's like the sticks still hit the drum. It's still the same physics. Now it's just how you hold the stick. Now it just comes down to the philosophy behind why we choose what we choose. So I think it's just important. Like you said, it's kind of, you got to know your audience. You got to know the community and the students that you're serving.
Now, I was in the Vandergrift clinic at PASIC, and I will say that is a very total percussion driven program. So they don't do WGI. Every student takes percussion lessons, not marching percussion lessons, and they do percussion ensemble in the spring. So it makes all the sense in the world for that program to be using match grip in the fall.
Yep.
And apply that the rest of the year.
So that's interesting. I mean, how many programs have you guys taught that say they want a total, like they want well-balanced percussionists, well-rounded percussionists?
I will say most band directors, like I would say a non-percussion band director, that's going to be the thing they want the most, is a well-rounded percussion section.
Well, what does well-balanced mean? How do
that doesn't mean having one drum tech in the fall and not having a concert percussion instructor or percussion director. It means you got to have somebody to be able to teach all of it.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, it's that, but it's also the match grip conversation. You know, I mean, that simply just plants the seed in the mind of the students of like, oh, yeah, this is like a well-rounded thing. Like how I play this marching snare drum thing in Grand Nat's field is the same as how I'm going to play the glockenspiel for some Mozart thing with the opera program or something. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think it's all the tiny little things that add up into showing people and showing the students that like, yeah, these are the markers of a well-rounded program. These are the actual little things that make a well-rounded student. It's not massive changes. It's like a bunch of tiny little ones. And I think that going match grip just automatically sets the tone for that well-roundedness. You know what I mean? Yeah. For me,
right. And it's not about the grip; it's about can the students play the notes on the page.
At the end of the day,
yeah, right. And for me, the argument of traditional over match is: are you trying to teach well-rounded students, or are you trying to let them pigeonhole themselves? If you want to let them pigeonhole themselves, do traditional. If you actually want to execute on that well-roundedness, then you go match grip to reinforce all the same behaviors that you would expect on literally every other instrument that they're ever going to play.
One vote for pigeonholing.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
But again, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's just understanding that if you claim that you want a well-rounded program and that meets the needs of your students and your school, your community, then do those things. And for my sake, match grip is the way that you do that, by setting the tone and reinforcing certain behaviors, because you understand the transfer value of holding sticks like this and a marching snare drum is literally the same, basically, as playing timpani or suspended cymbal or a xylophone or two mallet marimba or literally anything else, right?
I can agree with that from a high school band director myself standpoint to the other high school band directors out there. If your goal is to have a well-rounded percussionist and a percussion section, I think match grip is the option for your snare line 100% in the fall.
And tell the kids, traditional grip does not apply to PlayStation remote grip. Match grip does.
Mm.
So,
right.
But yeah,
Thank you.
great
Dr.
conversation.
Cleveland. Very good. Awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, to just put it out there is some value to the historical study of where the instruments came from.
Absolutely.
Understanding, this is a military instrument that, walking around and communicating to soldiers in war what's going on. We just didn't have the gear to actually flatten this bad boy out. So this is what you had to do. Like, there's a lot of value to understanding that stuff. So
I agree.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for your time tonight very much.
Baby Yoda.
Here's Baby Yoda. And there's
Ryan Gosling.
All right,
It's all
RV.
about.
Where's your meme at, bro? Where's your meme? Come on.
I don't have one.
Your gluteus maximus turns heads. That's what it's about.
Thank you guys very much for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Put myself here.
San Fran, baby.
San Fran. All right.
All right. Y'all have a great night.
You too.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.